questions about the hello. We have been getting questions at different venues about traffic and what the traffic studies have shown out here. And what's traffic gonna look like in my neighborhood and what's traffic gonna look like in these different areas. So what we did was we asked some of the experts in this area who studied this for us as part of the project to come answer some of those questions and to tell you the information that they looked at and what they studied, what they know, what they're estimating, and how that will play out. And I will be the first to tell you that studies are great. They are not reality. So, you know, they have some margin of error in them. Hopefully you can tell us, you know, I think you have plus or minus numbers built in based on different things in the study. But I wanted to introduce myself, Catherine Sarnicki. I'm the Chief Development Officer with the St. Paul Port Authority, and I'm overseeing the Heights development, which if you're here, you've probably heard about, but 112-acre golf course that we are redeveloping, master plan done by the city, completed in 2021 to include 24 acres of housing, 20 acres of parks, 54 acres of light industrial, and lots of streets, utilities, trails throughout the neighborhood. So after we have our traffic discussion, if there are other things after that, I will be here, some of the team will be here. Certainly we can answer questions about anything, but I want to make sure we answer the traffic questions first. So let's introduce, we've got lots of folks here from the city of St. Paul. You want me to turn it over to you, Randy, to introduce?
Sorry to take that, sir. Hi, everyone. I'm Randy Newton. I'm the city traffic engineer with St. Paul. Happy to be here tonight. Thanks for having us. As Catherine mentioned, this is a port project, but there is a lot of these projects, a big project like this really is kind of a partnership with the city. So the city was a big part of the planning process up front, and we've been a part of a lot of the review process going through. So, you know, we understand a lot of what's happened. We've been part of some of that decision making. Along with me from the city, we have David Keebler, who is kind of our point person for Public Works for the Heights project. Ruben Collins here, who is our Transportation Planning Division Manager. And then I'll just take real quick, Luis Flores is here from Ramsey County. Ramsey County may be a little less the role of a partner. They have some other work going on associated with this. I think Luis has some information he can share later too. That's really all I have.
Excellent. And anything else before I'll introduce you, Bob, but Bob Barth is here with WSB. They are our design engineer and consultant for the project. And are you the one that's gonna get into some of the information?
I'm gonna talk about construction, but we have Mallory Fitzpatrick with WSB. Mallory was involved in preparing the traffic study that went along with the AUAR. So
Great.
she'll talk a little bit about the traffic study, the results. Catherine, and then I think we'll have talk a little bit about some things we've changed in the development since the traffic study came out, and that's really a result of neighborhood meetings with residents. There's really 4 items that were changed with the residential development along Winthrop that are pertinent to the neighborhood. And then I'll talk a little bit about construction, and then we'll open it up for questions. Actually, then Luis will talk about some other things the county's got going on. So a lot of content, but there's going to be plenty of time for Q&A at the end. So we'll turn it over to Mallory.
Awesome.
Great.
All right, hi, I'm Mallory Fitzpatrick. I'm a traffic engineer at WSB. I'll prepare the traffic study. We'll go over some things about that. Basically, the AUAR looked at existing conditions, the development impacts on 3 different build scenarios that we looked at, traffic operations and mitigation options. So there's 4 different conditions that were looked at. Existing.
Mallory, can you tell everybody what an AUAR?
Oh, sure. It stands for Alternative Urban Area Review. So it's basically a study of this area that we're looking at.
And you might have heard of environmental impact statements or environmental worksheets. So for a development of this size, this is the environmental review process that you go for a plan development. It's called the AUAR. But
And can I just ask Mallory, the kids start to get really loud in about 10 minutes. Can you be a little bit louder?
I'll try. I'm here. I have a quiet voice, but I'll try to project myself.
I appreciate it.
For sure. All right. So yeah, there were 4 different development scenarios that were looked at. The existing scenario, which is the existing golf course within this area. Scenario 1, which is this guy right here, just lays out a typical city grid where everything kind of lines up. That scenario included about 700,000 square feet of light industrial commercial uses, about 960 housing units. And then we also looked at scenarios 2 and 3, which don't have the same grid pattern as you see here. It kind of breaks up where these streets intersect these neighborhoods. Scenario 2 and 3 have a little bit denser uses. Scenario 2 had 840,000 square foot of light industrial and commercial, 960 housing units. Scenario 3, which would be the maximum density allowed. So quite a bit different, about 1 million square feet of light industrial, and about 2,600 housing units, so quite significant. So what we first did is looked at existing traffic conditions. Part of our traffic study, basically the first thing we do is look at how things are operating right now, what the traffic looks like surrounding the development. We look at things called ADTs, which is an average daily traffic volume in the roadway, as well as peak hour turning movement counts. So we look at typical AM peak hours between 7 and 8, and PM peak hour, which is about 4 to 5. We collect traffic data. So that's what all these different bubbles are at these intersections. So as you can see right now, Larkender has about 8,500 vehicles traveling on it today. West of McKnight, about 6,900. East of McKnight. McKnight a little bit higher at about 15,000. North of Larkender, and about 12,000 south of Larkender. If you wanted to look at all these numbers, how many vehicles are going through left, right, during the AM and PM peak hours. And then we looked at proposed conditions. So typically when we do traffic studies, we forecast traffic 20 years into the future, what that's gonna look like. So our 2040 no build condition. Just these numbers right here, basically, I think we looked at about a 0.5% increase in traffic over the next 20 years. And that's what these volumes look at. So Larkender, about 9,400, 7,600, McKnight, 16,000 and 13,000. So it's about a 15% increase in traffic over the next 20 years. And that's just background traffic. That's not including any development related traffic in this area that we're looking at here. And we did add on this here, these residential streets. They're about 400 vehicles per day on these streets is what we are assuming here, and then 1,500 on Ivy, 700 on Orange and Hawthorne. So build scenario 1 and 3, those were kind of put out. We did not go with those. Scenario 1 didn't meet the goals for jobs and housing. Also did not allow for industrial size parcels needed today. And then scenario 3, which was the max density, that was just too substantial for the residential component in this area, because it was more than double what the other 2 scenarios were. So the master scenario, scenario 2, is what we ended up going with. So those traffic volumes. All right, here, so as you can see, you can kind of compare the 2040 no build, and this is the 2040 build scenario 2. So this kind of gives you a comparison of the daily numbers on each of these roadways, and also the ANPR and peak hour turning movement counts. Yeah, basically we're adding 170 trips to these residential streets right here. We're assuming that about 10% of the development will go west over here, and then 10% will go south, and the rest will kind of spread on McKnight and Larpenteur. So really, if you look at it, 170 trips, that's, we usually say about 10% of daily traffic is in the peak hour, so that's 17 trips in the peak hour that we're adding to these streets. So that might be, you see an additional car every 3 minutes, that's what that looks like. Obviously on McKnight and Larpenteur, it's a little bit higher, but that's expected. Arterial roadways. With that. And then as far as mitigation, when we looked at the no build scenario, all these intersections operated pretty well. There'll potentially be an issue at McKnight and Larpenteur, but that can be fixed with longer left turn lanes, possibly retiming the signal. Once we're adding in development traffic, kind of same thing here, issue at McKnight and Larpenteur, which turn lanes can be extended. We also looked at, I think, Montana and Arlington, had some delays coming in and out of the development here, if there's only one lane, shared left turn and right turn lane, but if we add separate left turn and right turn lanes out of this development, it operates at a pretty good level. So. And then as a whole, I know the development has changed slightly from when the traffic study was done. So these numbers are slightly off, but as far as daily trips, this development from scenario 2 is about 7,500 daily trips. And that also includes 10% internal trips. We expect 10% of these people to be traveling within. But then again, that 7,500 gets spread out throughout all these different roads. So
Can you explain a little bit more about what those trips, like how do you base that? What are those
Yeah.
made up of?
So basically, when we do trip generation for development, there's this thing called an ITE trip generation manual. And for housing, you plug in how many houses you plan on building, and then it gives you a daily and peak hour expected trip generation. I think a single family home expects about 10 daily trips. And then if we look at industrial or warehouse uses, that's based off of square footage. So you put in 840 square feet of industrial, and that gives you a daily number, basically in and out trips, how many people are going into that throughout the day, and then also during the peak hours, AM and PM peak hours. So that's where those numbers come from.
How many units are in the development housing unit?
So I know this study,
Yeah.
I guess you
So
can
that,
tell.
right now, there's 1,047 units planned.
And what's the increase in traffic on the United 1,040?
Yes, so we're most close to that's the no build, to the scenario 2. Traffic that assumed 1,000 housing units, and 840 or 850,000 square feet of industrial.
So yeah, that adds about 2,000 trips onto McKnight throughout this segment. That's
Given that speed limit will likely decrease, I imagine, or there are gonna be traffic lights along the way, and would that slow down traffic? Increase the number of vehicles per hour, because that would seem to be a thing that could happen conceivably, not just volume as opposed to the speed limit and congestion as well.
So the traffic study didn't recommend any signalized intersections with this scenario. If it were the denser scenario, I think it was Montana that might have needed a traffic signal because people wouldn't be able to get out of here. But if we add the turn lanes out, people are able to get out in an acceptable level.
But if you I mean, I don't understand why there wouldn't be a stop sign or a signal.
There'll be stop signs along the side streets here,
On midnight.
not on midnight. Just, the signal will still.
I don't know how you're ever gonna turn left out of that facility on McKnight going north, because that's way too, I don't do it without lights. A lot of accidents.
Yeah, I mean, we looked at the delay, and acceptable delay is typically, it's a level of service D, and if that's up to like 40-45 seconds, that you might be sitting there waiting, it's still an acceptable level. If it's beyond a minute, then that might be getting excessive and things might need to be looked at.
But you said 10 trips a day per household, an extra 1,000 households without the industrial, so 10 times 1,000?
That would be for
If
single
they were all
family.
single
If it-
family.
If it's multifamily, the trips are a
Probably
little
more.
bit less.
So how many cars, when you say 1,040 residents, do you figure each resident, I mean, most of them are gonna have 2 cars,
Right.
right?
I don't know the, actual number that we have for the multifamily. It's over 1, but I think it's like 1.25 cars or 1.5 cars, per unit for the multifamily. And then I'm not sure what the estimate is for single family, if it's somewhere between 1 and 2 vehicles per unit.
I would ask, the most busy time on Larpenteur every day is when the schools are getting started or going on. You got the Long Park Academy and the Gil Murray, and then 642 picking up and letting off the passengers. Now, when you have, now all the children that are on this place, they'll go to St. Paul Public Schools and they will need to be transported because the closest school is behind, and nobody walks that far anymore. Have you thought about school bus traffic?
I guess this study in particular, school bus traffic, yeah, I guess that wasn't part of this study.
Would you include that in another study? Would you know how many residents are gonna be there and what the school population will be?
Have you had ways to estimate that in the past that you guys have
Well,
seen?
just say with trip generation, I'll just maybe jump in. When you do a traffic study of trip generation, those are numbers, right? There's like kind of standard numbers that are used for different types of development, different sizes. It's different for every development. That's encompassing all the trips that come with a house. So like if you say there's 100 single family homes, 100 trips, that's not just like, that's the newspaper person coming, that's the school bus coming. That's what you typically see. I will tell that I've done this for a lot of time using the IT rates. And like when you run the numbers out and like sometimes you see some really big numbers. Once the development happens, rarely have I seen the numbers actually be that big. So, I mean, there is a process, there is a way to do this. It's all encompassing. These studies are never perfect, as Catherine said, but there is like kind of a basis behind them, based on the development that's there and some standard assumptions. So again, was there like a review of like exactly here's the way the buses are gonna be routed, but those numbers include all those other trips that happen.
So I have a question. Okay, study's been done and we built, will you be reviewing this? So then when we do have a lot of traffic on Montana and can't get out on the street, is there a place we can go and complain?
That's actually part of, the study, says that we, as the county, will monitor the Montana McKnight, intersection with the idea of making a recommendation in the future as to what could fit here to make this operate better. And again, I don't know if there's enough space for a roundabout, a traffic signal, what fits here, but so the idea, we're gonna take a look at that once it's operating at first and then see the calls that we can. Yeah. Let me write it down, I'll give it to you.
So what you're saying then, if I've got this right, is that for Larpenteur and McKnight, there's gonna be no added stoplights. There's gonna be no added, like, what, I mean, that used to be 2 lanes both ways, now it's 1. So there's gonna be no added lanes, the only thing that's gonna happen to help us wait in line is you're adding left-hand turn lanes is the only thing that's changing, that's what or am I missing something?
Let's pull this. Probably this other one's got this.
streets.
On it, so let's turn this so it's the same direction, even though it makes it sideways, at least the north is up on both of them. So we are putting in dedicated turn lanes, for trucks coming, up McKnight that would go into Arlington and Montana to come into there. We do expect the majority of traffic will go south. Especially because you don't want to wait, right? I mean, if you need to come out and go north, you'd probably use the Larpenteur exit, because we can get through the street and come out this way, and go north. Some of the things that we heard from the community was, we really don't want the through traffic to go all the way through our site. We don't want folks to come through here and be able to speed through here. So one of the things, our design team did was specifically offset, right? There's a reason Sherwood doesn't connect here with Arlington there. So someone can't go through this and then zip into Sherwood, to zip across town, right? You have to come to Arlington, go down and come over. So to help keep this feel more like a neighborhood, we tried to offset those. This Spine Road, Howard, we think will carry the majority of traffic north and south through the site. And we think the industrial traffic will stay here, mostly on this inner loop. Unless for some reason they are having issues getting north, and perhaps they would go to Larpenteur, take a right, and then left if they need to go north. But the majority of the traffic likely will be going east on Larpenteur or south on McKnight to get to the interstate system. Couple of other, sure, Joan, I was just gonna mention a couple other things
I
we
guess
did.
my question is, I know we're focusing on those two main streets, but I live in St. Paul and I don't live on those little streets. I live on Hawthorne, okay? And it's already a crazy, crazy space. And, down to Ruth Street, they whip through there. They think they, own the road. And I'm concerned because we have a lot of young families there. And I know that people are going to be using this street. And we already have 13 school buses every morning and they're counted. And some stop, some don't at the intersection of Ruth and Hawthorne. And I guess for me is, what is this whole study gonna say about how much traffic is going to go down our side streets? What about Orange? What about Hyacinth? What about these streets over here that, we already have a lot of traffic because people get off of McKnight, they come down and they zoom on to Maryland. And I guess I know those other streets are gonna be very busy, and I understand that for other people, but how does this affect us in our area down where we are?
Yeah, and can you talk a little bit about what the pre numbers were down here on Orange and Hawthorne? Did we have those? Were they 700? We think they're gonna be sorry, I covered it up for you.
Yeah. So existing assumptions are, it's about a 700, ADT, 700 vehicles per day along Hawthorne and Orange. And it's expecting there'll be about 170 vehicles added to those streets from this development.
Okay, I have a question about that same area. Recently, Maryland feeds into Hawthorne. And we did a police study and had the meter up and everything else, because speed limit is only 20 miles an hour, and it's never been driven at 20 miles an hour, never. And I mean, I'll admit, you catch yourself doing it.
Yeah, the bigger streets, you find.
You add these additional cars, you're gonna have a bottleneck merging onto Hawthorne, and it's not a real through street. It's an L-shaped corner off of Maryland. There's been tons of accidents there. And I'm concerned about the volume of traffic that's being diverted to a local street. When the speed limit's 20 miles an hour, how are you gonna account for the additional traffic?
Yeah, and I don't know, Randy, if you guys have any notice on that. I know there's some sense that when there's backups in areas, people will find other ways to get where they need to go. But I don't know if there's measures in place where, if they're having issues with people speeding through the neighborhood, that we can put a monitor out there at some point.
So I'll share that, like, what you're sharing right now is something I hear everywhere in the city. Like this, okay, so I'm not trying to downplay it or not, like, it's a real concern everywhere. It's a super frustrating thing for staff, but it's an issue that we see everywhere. And again, not to downplay it, just it's a real issue that we have everywhere. when we start talking about like, this is a change, this is a change to the neighborhood, I'm not just here to say that like it's not gonna have any impact. I think we tried to set it up in a way that like made the connections, but also gave people options and other things, so. You know, a big part of like sort of traffic planning is that making sure that those connections exist, but help disperse the traffic a little bit, right? That's not, we didn't make one connection, we didn't like, you know, make it so that every vehicle had to go on Ivy. Like if there's sort of these other connections to hopefully like whatever happens kind of can dissipate a little bit. Even the connections that we talked about going to Larpenteur and to
Okay.
like McKnight, there's multiple connections. So if you want to go to the north, like you, as you said, you might go up to Larpenteur to do that. Or if you want to go to the south, you might, you know, cut through the site and then take a right. So you have these multiple options to kind of do it in the safest way. And you have multiple options to hopefully spread that traffic out a little bit. You know, I would say when we talk about traffic on 200 residential, like our typical residential streets probably end up with volumes somewhere under 1,000. Some are maybe a couple hundred, some might be 1,000 or more. There is plenty of capacity on these streets. It's not really a capacity issue. They can function with like carry more. It's more, I'd say, a livability issue, right? The more traffic that's on a street, like anyone that lives on a street, I live on a residential street, like I don't want to see a lot of traffic there. These function, there's no reason like these, like 1,000 vehicles, 2,000 vehicles, these residential streets can accommodate them. And typically, again, we see a lot of our residential streets by up to about 1,000 vehicles a day. Some have more, some have less, but they can certainly accommodate that. I think as we move forward, I think again, there's existing issues and, you know, if we need to, I mean, our ability to deal with traffic calming, traffic issues within neighborhoods is somewhat limited. I will say that our focus of the city is really focusing on our more major streets. Yeah, I wish we could magically make drivers drive safer and like more, how do I say, more responsible. I don't have a magic fix for that. So a lot of our focus is on sort of those collector and arterial streets. If there is a significant issue, I mean, we do pick up the phone, we do answer it, we will like take a look at it situations. And, you know, but you know, to be honest, like there's not a lot we have to offer in those neighborhood streets. But if there is something that's a specific thing, you can certainly contact traffic engineering. I think one thing that we can do with a site like this is like, we are gonna have to monitor once it's up and, you know, once it's up and built, like, and one thing, I don't know if I'm curious with the, like these assumptions you're making for existing, did we do any existing counts like in the neighborhood streets around the development?
We did in the locations that were noted on. the-
Yeah, I guess
I'm not sure where they all were.
I helped them say I didn't do all of it, but I think we get some sort of counts along here and estimated based on.
So one thing I think we could offer, maybe it's something the project team can circle back to the city afterwards, and maybe making sure just to have a baseline, like what are the counts now before the development sort of gets started and built? And then like, you know, once this is built, we can like, it has something really changed and what to the extent that it changed? Because that might help educate it. Again, it's not gonna like magically fix a problem that might be an existing condition. And just because there's more traffic doesn't mean that there's like something magically we can do, but it helps undertake, you know, it at least gives a common understanding of what may have changed or not changed with that development. And having that data would be helpful. So I think one thing that we can do, like here in the short term, is get that existing traffic so that we can understand how they change.
What about pedestrian traffic? Has that been taken into account? People crossing, given that more people will be living in the neighborhood, crossing, we'd like to maybe visit some of the trails and parks in that surrounding area in Maplewood.
There's a lot of walking trails.
Yeah, so I know, I know, I mean, there's definitely some things that are happening with the development, that there are pedestrian crossing islands that are being added with the development for crossing of McKnight. I'm not sure, I know there's a new project, some improvements that are happening at the intersection of Larpenteur and McKnight. But yeah, so there's this project, as we do this, we're trying to make those connections within the site and adjacent to the site. I don't know all of them, but I know that there's at least some of those connections being made.
Is that sidewalk remaining on McKnight?
So I don't know all the specific
I do
details.
have a question for you.
Why don't they answer the
Sure,
question about the sidewalk?
the trail along McKnight
Yeah.
is gonna remain.
Sidewalk.
Sidewalk on the west side.
Well, that's a question. I think we have it right now as a regional trail, which will likely be blacktop, not concrete sidewalk.
Yeah, it's a trail.
That's what.
Well, right now, it's cement.
There is cement part of it. But there will be, lots of trails, so, along this main street, there will be a multi-purpose trail and a sidewalk. To try and make sure that for pedestrian traffic, there's a lot. Through here, there's a trail easement, and then on these roads, through all of these roads have trails along them as well. So that we really wanted to make sure we were able to connect to the Furness Trail here and to the trails down here and over to make it a lot better trail connectivity. So there will hopefully be lots of ways to get through the site, but also hopefully some cool trails, more probably pedestrian trails and boardwalk trails that are in and around the wetlands. Less than, like biker or commuter trails. I wouldn't see those being part of those.
And in many locations, we'll have multi-use trails for bikes and rollerbladers and then an adjacent sidewalk.
Yeah,
for peds. So
especially in all this.
we are trying to separate some of those uses.
Can't you turn a sidewalk into a trail so that the homeowners don't have to be responsible for shoveling all of a sudden areas that didn't used to have any sidewalk and now you're putting sidewalks in?
I'm gonna see if there's anyone from the city that talks to why you put in sidewalks versus trails on city streets. I mean, that's the standard that I know. Are you talking about
Yes, I know.
this Winthrop
Yeah,
corridor?
yeah, that
That's very burdensome,
understandable.
very, very burdensome.
I'm one of the only blocks on my part. Residents on my block in the north end that had sidewalk and was taken. So I understand, I still haven't shoveled that sidewalk, even though there's a sidewalk on the block.
I'm
I
on the
understand.
corner, it's
Yeah.
happening here on the
Yeah.
corner.
Yeah.
That's extremely
I understand
burdensome.
that. What the city policy is when new roads go in, regardless of whether they're reconstructed or brand new roads, the city standards are to have sidewalks on both sides of the street. Because we're trying to accommodate all users on all of them, some level. And without sidewalks, and Ruben, you can join in at any time you want, but when there's no sidewalks, then you're forcing those pedestrians out into the street. And that's not just those that are able to walk, but those that are in wheelchairs, those that are in crutches, those that are blind and can't see, and all of that stuff. So I
really
understand.
get it,
Right.
but there has to be some point where the square footage of the acreage, or whatever you want to call it, becomes burdensome to the homeowner.
Right.
That,
And to my knowledge, that we don't have anything in the city at the present time that addresses an overly burdensome lot from a size perspective. The policy and the ordinance is very clear that the adjacent property owner is responsible for the snow and ice control on the sidewalk in front of their property.
not in front, the side, I have a side and a front.
In front and on the side of their property, whatever part of your parcel abuts city right of way. And the sidewalk there, the responsibility belongs to that parcel. And I didn't make the rules are gonna be here long after I'm gone. There might be ways to adjust those rules at a future date, but right now there is not. And I would say that it's not just you that is having this question, there are a lot of others that are having this question because there, over the last, I think it was 3 years ago, maybe, that the sidewalk policy changed from the standpoint of inclusion in public improvement projects. So I wouldn't say that there's an alternative in place or one forthcoming, but I would say that the city is hearing that message from you as well as others.
No, you can patiently wait for.
That's okay. I just wanted to go back to something that you had said, a little bit earlier. You said that, traffic, you were limited with traffic calming measures. And I just wanted to know how you're limited or why you're limited.
I'd say there's
What's that?
two things. One is that we're a big city and we have limited resources. And so part of it is when we start making decisions about where we spend those resources, where are we gonna spend it to have the best outcome? So some of that, we're gonna have it's gonna be, those dollars are better spent on like arterials where there's a proven, like from a safety, there's more safety issues on those streets than there are residential. Quite frankly, there's just not that many crashes, there's not nearly as many crashes on like local residential streets. The data proves that out. And then two, I'd say, quite frankly, there's not some magic solution. I wish I could just make people drive, more responsible. There is not some magic solution. There's nothing I can necessarily do like in any sort of mass way on city streets, not saying me, but like the city, there's no like great solution we have to like make people drive slower. There's things that like when we do designs, we are trying to think about this and how we make people go slower. Quite frankly, there isn't some magic fix that we can, like, I can go on any given road and just all of a sudden make people drive 20 miles an hour. So there's a little bit of the reality of what can we actually do. And then there is, you know, with whatever limited pot of money we have, the data would tell us that it's better spent on those collector yards or those streets. So those are the two reasons.
Okay.
In St. Paul, I ever considered photo radar. I know Minneapolis is talking about it. And I come from Canada where they do have photo radar, and actually, in addition to slowing down traffic, it does create a lot of revenue for those cities that have.
And if people
To help
drive
fix-
slower up there.
If they help fix the roads, you'd probably put some of that money
So
towards fixing the
I'll
road.
say two things. One, right now, as the state law currently stands, we do not have the ability to do it. So whether or not the city wanted to or not, the way state law is currently situated, we do not have the ability to do automated enforcement, either like red light running or speed enforcement. There is not, actually Minneapolis is making it, has had kind of the last couple of years, and they're currently making an effort to like try to get that legislation in place. If it were to pass, it's gonna probably be limited to some form of fashion. I would say there's still a lot of questions about that type of thing in terms of, one is that what you say about revenue, like that's like a big no-no for a lot of like legislatures, right? Like, if we're gonna do it, it needs to be for safety reasons, not to raise money.
Well, exactly, but that's the spin-off regardless of what you look at.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that that's one of the reasons why people like some of our legislatures like do not want to do it.
Yeah.
The other part is I think there is, obviously, we have an issue in the country, in here, like just how we've done enforcement and how that's affected, folks of different backgrounds. And I think there is a concern, legitimate concern about how that would be run, like how you would put a program like that out there. So if that were to pass, that's something the city would have to wrestle with, before we move it forward. So I just share, like, I think it might be something that's coming at some point in the future. Right now, we don't have the legal authority to do it. And if we did get the legal authority, there's still a lot of things the city would have to wrestle with.
I have a question. So pertaining to like the study, I live on Ivy Avenue. And Ivy Avenue is kind of a straight run through from the railroad tracks all the way down to White Bear Avenue. And there is only 2 stop signs on that entire road. So just wondering if I have a two-part question actually. So what like stopping mechanisms, or are you guys putting bump outs at Winthrop and Howard where it attaches to Ivy, or what is your plan right there currently?
Yeah, and you guys can speak to more of it. I know there is, there is a bump out condition. I don't think it's a stop. I mean, I think it's a stop only on Winthrop, not on,
Yeah, stop on
Ivy.
Winthrop, not on Ivy.
yeah. I don't know if that's a request that if there became a problem, that's something, a 4-way stop would
Well,
ever
again,
be considered.
I'd say, again, when we talk about all these roads, like Ivy is one, like, if something were to be a problem, like that might be something we'd look at some different treatments on. I would say just typically, everyone always comes, look, there's a stop sign out there. I would say stop signs are not really a speed control device. And what I also share with stop signs is a couple things. One, they make an intersection feel busier. Like an intersection that just because it takes people sometimes longer to go through there. If it's not really needed for traffic control reasons, we get really poor compliance. There's multiple locations in the city right now that I'm getting people like, there's a safety issue here and it's an always stop. That probably isn't like meet sort of traffic volume warrants, like it was put in to like try to be a speed control and it's not working. And the third reason is like, it does, like, I think for people that live around there, I do think it actually increases noise because, some people are slowing down, but like when you decelerate and accelerate, that's actually a noise thing. And it actually, like, I will say when people are like accelerating from the stop sign, it actually makes it feel like they're going faster than they really are because you can hear it. So there's some like negative things about a stop sign. So it's not to say like, so really that, we'd want to try to focus on other things that we might need to do. If that's something that as we, we'll have to, kind of check what the plan is, like, we would look at bump outs and maybe some other treatments on Ivy. There's probably some stuff that might be happening with this project, but I would not suggest that the stop sign would necessarily be a good option. That said, once this is up and running, if we sort of see traffic volumes that would sort of warrant a stop sign, we would be willing to do it. We just don't want to put it in there just because there's a complaint about speed because of all those other impacts.
So my other part of the question is, it seems like the traffic study has been really like mainly around the heights, but really it affects a lot of the neighborhood. And my house is very close to Furness Parkway. And it seems like, I don't know which streets will be thoroughfare streets, but I know part of Furness Parkway does not have a full stops intersection on when you cross Furness Parkway at some of the locations. And what is the plan there for some of those intersections where they don't have like a stop sign and there's no crosswalk there or anything like that?
I know we haven't looked at those as part of our project at Furness.
I'm not sure I'm fully following the question, and this might be
Well,
like,
I'll tell you, like at Arlington, if you think Furness Parkway divides, there's two streets. On one side of Furness Parkway, which is,
Yep.
well, it's Furness Parkway, and then the other side, there's another street. And there's a stop sign on the one end of the parkway. But on the other half, or the other half of, on the other middle of the parkway, there is no stop sign. And so the intersection where you cross the parkway, there is no stop sign, there is no crosswalk there. So you're actually just crossing the street with nothing. And I think one of those streets that are coming from the new development is actually a thoroughfare street that will actually end up going through there.
so a couple of things I'd share. One is we can take a closer look at that, like, I mean, but the other thing is, I think part of the way that this development was set up with the multiple connections is really to try to avoid that any one street sees a lot of additional traffic. So, you know, there might be a little bit of additional traffic on each street, but there should not be, because of the multiple connections, like a focused amount on any one street. So, you know, based on at least the initial work, as I understand it, we're not expecting like, you know, again, a big volume change on any given street. And so as you go east and go over to Furnace Parkway, anything that would happen there would be pretty minimal. Any difference in traffic at each one of those intersections should be fairly similar to existing.
Honestly,
Well, and
this is
none-
what I
none of
don't
the
wanna give
streets-
you any disrespect, but every time I call the city about this, all I get is lip service every time. And it's very frustrating. And with the traffic volume that we're gonna see increase, it's not only the safety for my kids, but all the kids in the neighborhood and all the kids that are be crossing Furness Parkway from the Heights School and all those things. And I feel like no one really cares and everyone is just worried about the development and all that stuff. And it's not affecting everybody who is maybe 6 blocks away, a half a mile away, a mile away. And I just feel that that's not being taken into consideration at all.
Can I get a little clarification on the intersection issue that you're talking about? Because I was just on Ivy at Furnace Parkway, and as you're going, depending on which way you're going, whether it's eastbound or westbound, you have to stop on one spot, and then you have to cross two directions of that parkway at the same time. Regardless of which way you're coming from, there's not an intermediate stop sign, there's no crosswalks, there's no pedestrian facilities or anything on that parkway. Is that the intersection concern that you've expressed?
Yeah, at Ivy, at Arlington,
Okay.
at Orange, at all of those intersections that you consider walking down Furness Parkway,
Mhm.
those are all concerns.
And I can understand that because when I've approached on several occasions, it's counterintuitive in crossing and it's a scary intersection with pedestrians, bicycles, anybody that's using it at this point. What I would say is that it's kind of a two effect issue. You've got, and I know you look at public works as a city and we cover the entire city and I understand that, I get that, but Furness Parkway belongs to the Parks Department. So there's got to be a concerted effort between Public Works and the Parks Department to identify the issue, start talking about it and bring some kind of resolution to that issue. Is that issue that's out there right now, is it going to be exacerbated by this particular project? Right now, I think the data is saying that there will be some increases. But as far as the level of service and safety at that intersection, the data suggests that it doesn't present any more of an issue than it is right now. That said, I understand what you're saying about it being an issue right now. How to affect change is going to be the question. Is that the responsibility of this project? It would be what I would ask. You know, is that something that can be brought to both Public Works and the Parks Department for taking a look at it? Can you work through the district council? Can you work through the war rep for the area to bring that issue forward?
Yeah, for sure.
You know, so those are some of the things that I was just thinking that might be alternative to approaching the resolution of that issue.
I just see that the increase of traffic is gonna be happening on our streets. And I get concerned because I feel like the city just ignores us or doesn't give us any direction, and they just say they're too busy doing other projects.
I'll just say, that's not our intent. We have a very busy staff. I do think, to David's point, and I think we can certainly, one of the things that comes out with these meetings, we go out here and have these meetings, like, I've never heard of that issue, like, that issue never come past my desk before, that I recall. So some of these things, when we come out here, we do hear some things that are worth maybe following up and taking a look at, just from an existing position, not even like worrying about the project that might be happening. I will say from the project standpoint, I'm not saying there will be no change on that location. I think what we expect from a traffic volume standpoint, it should be pretty minimal. But there's an existing issue. We can certainly take a look at that and see if there is something that we, think there's a fix to. Not every issue is like, the problem is not every issue has like some fix that's like simple or easy to implement.
Sure.
So I just have a quick question. Do those little digital, you're driving too fast sign work? Like you're supposed to be going 20, but you're going 25? Does that help slow people down?
It's a tool we have. So it's a tool that we look at. One of the things that we do have is we actually have like temporary ones that we rotate around the city. So I was talking to staff today about making sure that we got them out there. We have a program where we basically have eight temporary ones we move around. One for reward and a bonus one that like we can kind of put somewhere. So like if there is a specific need, if we get a request, we can put it out there. So like we would potentially put like an out on Ivy in one direction. I would say what we see with those is they're gonna typically be kind of effective, like right when they get out there. And the longer they stay out in one location, they probably lose that effectiveness a little bit. Because when anything that's new on the street, kind of typically gets a reaction after it's been out there for a while, you kind of sort of dwindles in sometimes. So that's one of the reasons we like kind of the temporary sign program. So I think that's something that can be looked at. I think if there is one thing we should like talk about, like in terms of if there's a certain period during construction where something's happening because of road closures or other things, like we just need to be communicated with, to potentially put it out there, or it's a tool that could be used just as part of like the traffic control plan to do something like that to help minimize some of the initial impact of the construction project.
I know you guys had a question.
Yeah, quick question. With all these particular intersections that we're concerned as community, is there anybody taking note of these so that you know what corners right now may be a problem and maybe would be considered a little bit additional attention before your whole plan goes into effect? I mean, these are people that this is concern in their neighborhoods. But if we're speaking and not being heard.
Well, I know you had an intersection, and I asked Ruben if you can just, I see you have, you can write that down. I'm hearing for it, I'm hearing, I maybe help rely on some of.
That's my concern. Are we being listened to?
Yeah.
And then are you gonna share these meeting minutes with us? So that we.
I don't know if there's actually.
Recording it, and it will be on our website hopefully tomorrow or the next day.
Okay, great.
I have two questions about Larpenteur, because I live off of it. Are you planning on putting a sidewalk out on Larpenteur at all to help with the, because when you get past Hill Murray, the sidewalk stops and there's no sidewalk.
So, part of the project, at least in this area that we own, we've dedicated additional right of way to the county so that there will be room for a trail, multi-purpose trail and a sidewalk.
So you'll be able to walk on Larpenteur safe.
So you'll be able to walk. It won't go all the way to Hill Murray. We're connecting it here to Furness.
Okay, so you're just gonna have a chunk of sidewalk that goes nowhere?
So it will come through here and we will continue it, to Furness. I guess I'm not sure what the condition is.
It goes to BB.
All the way to BB?
All the way to
Okay.
BB.
Is that where it
Connects
connects
to
in?
McKnight, and it will connect to the internal trail system with it.
Okay, but once you cross McKnight, going to Hill Murray, that still won't have a sidewalk on that side?
East side of McKnight, you're
Yeah.
saying? No, that's Maplewood, so we're not proposing anything there right now.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then my other question is that like and when you're doing your traffic studies, and somebody brought this up earlier, Hill Murray, when they're in session in the morning, that chunk of Larpenteur is actually closed down. I mean, they have a little car with flashing lights, they've got a guy out there directing traffic. And so right now it backs up and you won't want to have a bunch of people trying to get that way, it's gonna get horrible.
We actually, just last week, I had somebody go out there and take some video, take some notes and
Okay.
try to propose some sort of solution to the school. They're usually more effective when they're implemented at the beginning of the school year as opposed to in the middle, the communication plan, more time for that, so. We don't have a concrete answer yet, but we've looked at all the angles.
Cause that'll be a real safe, because people are trying to pass and that guy's sitting there with his flashing
Right.
lights on his back.
It works. The traffic control person does a good job based on the video I saw and just the report.
Yeah.
So, but it is a more of a temporary solution as opposed to something more.
Yeah, so if you did only right-hand turns, period, and put a lane in for the right-hand turn, that would do, okay,
That's one of the things they suggested, but
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
I live at 2139 Clear Avenue, and I have a big water hose that is attached to Sherwood fire hydrant, to the fire hydrant right in front of my house, and I'm hoping it's not gonna be that way for the duration of this project, because it's very cuddly. There's flashing lights at night on my sidewalk, and the hose dragging along there. So
I do know that is a temporary condition. We will be hooking up to permanent water supply. But that is a safety to have fire protection to the site right now.
I wonder when it will happen.
So right now, we're scheduled to connect.
Well, if I may.
Yeah, please,
What you're
Bob.
seeing right now is St. Paul Regional Water Services doing work. in
Oh, that's not
preparation
even-
for the Heights,
Okay,
so that'll go on for a little bit of time here, that should be resolved fairly quickly, I think within a month or so. Then you're gonna see construction of Winthrop, so that'll be that next step. But what you're seeing today is St. Paul Regional Water doing some improvements, in the neighborhood just to get prepared for the Heights.
When are they going to tear up Winthrop?
I'm thinking, I don't know, June.
June is
Early
the early June, and it's gonna start at Ivy. This block's gonna be first, so from Ivy through Clear and Cottage. This block here and this block is where the contractors are talking about starting to get those utilities in to facilitate the Habitat for Humanity national build event that will be on the site the first week in October.
I think one thing that's important to mention too is, so when we looked at scenario 2, which is what the recommended scenario is, that's the master plan that the city went through. And I don't know, what was that, was it 960 residential
Yeah.
units? So what's happened since that time is there have been a number of public meetings and the densities for the residential have gone down significantly since then. I don't know what Habitat's gonna end up with at the end of the day, it's still kind of in flux, but significantly less than that, significantly more single-family homes with their own entry, that sort of thing. The other thing is that they have an alley now, rather than driving on Winthrop. They're gonna be driving into an alley to access their garages. And we've also narrowed up Winthrop from, originally in the plan it had been 32 feet. We've narrowed it to 27 feet, moved it to the east to give it a little bit more ease into the existing neighborhood. Parking on one side only on the east side. So a lot of those things came after the traffic study, but they were the result of hearing what residents had and comments on. I went to in other parts of the traffic management plan.
Yeah, I just clarify something you said, the traffic study was assuming 960 housing units,
Yeah, multifamily housing.
and now there's 1,000.
So 1,000 total, but there's 900 multifamily housing, and I'm not, do you have a split out for the ownership for the lower density numbers?
Yeah.
Okay, I can follow up and get those numbers back to you, but there, it's the
Total number
The-
of units.
the total number of units has always, the target's been 1,000.
Right.
And we're hoping we're close to that, but I think the multifamily count was one of the changes that we looked at is this was supposed to be a medium density area. And so these are now higher density, and this one has been lower density to mesh in with the neighborhood. So we haven't seen, I mean, we have an estimated building count and apartment units in them, but what, these are still yet to be determined, these 4 lots. For final numbers.
Yeah, so is the red along Lavender, is that high density?
Yes, so these will be, I think the code allows up to 6 stories, but the plans we've seen here are 5-story buildings.
So then, when you did your traffic study, you came up with some numbers that percentage increases the traffic. But you've got all these, most of the people are living down by this corner, right? So
Right.
would that give you a much more massive impact on Lavender and night traffic?
And yeah, most of the traffic is going on McKnight and Lavender only,
You know, I don't.
10% is resident.
The issue about, your study, I think what you're saying is you do generalities, right? This is increasing traffic. It looks okay, but you're not looking at specifics on the area around the development. So we live on Sterling, and I don't think we'll be able to turn lockdown to Larpenteur with all that traffic going from McKnight up to Central.
And do it when home runs.
Yeah, I mean, typically with studies, we do intersections connecting to the site. You get too far into the weeds, if you go too far out, then it kind of never ends, how far out do you go, so you just look at, the main points connecting to the site here. So,
But you weighted it for the density of the housing.
right, yeah, so I mean, a lot of it might be coming from here, a little bit less spread out throughout here. But yeah, that's taken into account for our study.
A couple other things, well, I know you had some stuff, I was just gonna mention, there were a couple other things that, we did hear. During the planning of the process, right? We heard, we don't want our neighborhood to become through streets. And we were very cognizant about making sure none of the streets went all the way through. So we were in danger of having one street go through here. This is a pedestrian only area. It won't be automobiles here. You have to go around it and make things turn around. And Bob was mentioning the Habitat for Humanity parcels. Instead of having parking and driveways off of either of these side streets, they now have an alley down the middle. And Habitat is committed to doing the single family and duplexes along this side. There will be townhomes along the end caps and then along the internal street. But try to keep the lower density to have a better mesh in with the neighborhood here. And added originally we weren't gonna have any single family homes. But we heard loud and clear, we want more single family homes in the neighborhood and tried to accommodate for that as well. Am I missing any of the other big things we did, Bob,
We have some bump
the bump
outs.
outs to
Yeah.
help? Where
What do you
with
mean by
parking,
bump out?
Well, what it is on those little residential streets that cross from Howard to Winthrop, they're really short. I call them half block streets, they're like.
I don't even think they show up on here. the
Well,
bump outs.
So all these little streets right here. Right here. These have bump outs, head bump outs. So what it does is it makes the intersection for peg crossing a little narrower, so there's less distance to go from curb across on the crosswalk. It also makes it a little more, because we'll have parking on both sides of those short residential roads, it makes it a little more difficult for trucks and other larger vehicles to make that turn. It's just really a disincentive to make the turn because it looks like, I think truckers are gonna look at it and they're gonna say, I can't get through there,
I don't wanna
right?
try
So
and-
I'm not gonna try, I'm gonna go where I'm supposed to go, which is out to McKnight and Marvin. So it's not a magic bullet, it's not a cure-all, but it's something that we could do for both pedestrians and really to discourage traffic going into the neighborhood.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, Luis, I want to give you a chance to.
Oh, sure, I don't really have much, but I did draw a bump out, so.
Oh, no.
So the distance that the pedestrian has to cross is shorter as opposed to if this
Thank you.
existing curve, you have a longer distance, and it also creates some parking opportunities. It's a traffic calming device. I will preface this by saying I'm not the project manager for this project. But this project is the Larpenteur White Bear pavement replacement. It's already under construction. I'm here to let people know that on May 7th at 5:30 at the YMCA in Maplewood, there's going to be an open house to talk about construction activities. I talked to the project manager for this project and said, hey, just so you know, we're working with the heights, making sure that those detours are not stepping on each other, because, you know, I think we're, as Minnesotans, I think we're pretty patient and we understand construction has to happen. But at the same time, you don't want to be going from construction to construction to construction. And so, my name is Luis Flores. You can just Google me, Luis Flores, Ramsey County, Luis Flores. She has my information too. But that's pretty much the main thing I want to chat about. And if you have any other traffic concerns in Ramsey County, county roads, I'm happy to answer. Yes.
May 7th, what time?
5:30, YMCA Maplewood. Yeah, and if you put in just, project page is actually pretty informative, just put in White Bear, Larpenteur Construction, yeah, you're gonna hit it. Project manager, things, Alan Maxwell, but I can, you try to answer whatever I can. Just review things.
So if you guys have more questions or wanna look at some of these maps and think about things and ask questions, Bob's gonna stay here for a minute, see the folks from the city will be here for a little bit, I'll be here, you can talk one-on-one, about specific intersections or things. Ruben, was there something else you wanted to make sure we cover?
I was raising my hand earlier, I was gonna suggest that we define bump out, we've now done that.
Okay,
That's
excellent.
great. But I have
Two great minds think alike.
another suggestion, could you give maybe just a really high overview of like, what should people expect to see this year on the site?
Yes. Bob, do you have a better grasp of that? I can do it in, I know,
I can take that.
I know you've been working on the schedule. but,
Yeah, I've been working on the schedule and it's in
It's a little bit in flux.
It's in flux. You know, we have weather in Minnesota, so sometimes that'll create the flux, so if I.
Oh, yeah,
Catherine,
yeah,
so,
let me get out of it.
right now, grading contractor is working out there. What you saw last year was what we call the remediation, where we're taking contaminated soils, moving them off site. Over the next 2 months, you're gonna see a lot of activity on the heights, a lot of trucks moving. That'll occur during May and June this year. All those trucks are gonna be heading out onto the, actually, I'm gonna use this figure here. So we have accesses with Ramsey County at Montana and Arlington, and then up at Larpenteur, and all those trucks will be using these access points. They should not be going through the neighborhood. And I'm sure the city will want to know if they are going through the neighborhood. We've been very clear with them, they don't have construction access into the city of St. Paul. They only have construction access on the Ramsey County roadway, so that's really important. So if anything happens to the contrary, Luis will want to know about it, right? Yeah, someone will want to know about it. So one of the things that will occur this year, and I'm not sure exactly when it will occur, there'll be a 2-week closure of McKnight. And we had thought that that would be maybe in the spring. I'm thinking it's gonna be a little bit more toward midsummer. The detour during that time, and really what that is for, is to connect utilities under McKnight and then pull them into the development. So 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, depending on the weather. The detour will be Larpenteur over to Geneva and then to Stillwater Road. We've coordinated these detours with Ramsey County, but this is still gonna be an inconvenience for everybody, right? Detours are a hassle, this road's gonna be closed and it's gonna be difficult. The idea though is that our contractor will get in and out and get the roadway reopened. The lane improvements on McKnight will be done under traffic, maybe later in the summer. So no intent to close the road during that. The other impact this summer. So we have a Larpenteur impact this summer. So with the county project, St. Paul Regional Water Service is going to be doing some work on Larpenteur. That's going to occur this spring. After they're done, we're going to have a closure of Larpenteur for a short period of time. Again, another couple-week closure. That one is to connect some sanitary and replace some sanitary sewer. The intent there is to get that road reopened before school starts. It's really the goal, and the county's been very clear with us that we have to achieve that goal. We don't want a closed road during school. So the idea is
The intersection.
it's actually a portion of Larpenteur from Winthrop. It actually goes all the way to Beebe, all the way to McKnight. That'll be the closure. It'll be a short closure, some sanitary sewer work, and then reopen the roadway. And again, the detour will be, McKnight, Sandhurst, White Bear Avenue. One other thing, it's not gonna affect you this year, but it will affect you next year, most likely, is that as part of this, we also have some work at Maryland and Kennard to do. And so we'll have to close that intersection probably in 2025, and that one has a detour as well, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. That's 2025. So 2024 is gonna be really busy out there. It, our consultants, the port, done a good job of managing the site. We had environmental remediation going out there last year. That was very successful. We managed the traffic, we managed the dust. So we've got a good handle on what we need to do in 2024 as well.
So when McKnight's closed, I'm gonna have to turn left out of my neighborhood onto Lavender, just now. Any chance we're gonna be fitting out those two lights coordinated, so at some point it's kind of clear for the neighbors to get out?
You mean like sequenced?
Yes, I mean,
I don't know,
so,
that's hard to do.
well, I know, but I live on Sterling and I'm heading north, I have to turn left on Lavender. You're gonna have McKnight closed, so I can't go out Montana.
Yeah,
And if there's traffic going this way, I can't turn. If there's traffic going this way, I can't turn. If you don't have some coordination, am I supposed to hold up for 2 weeks?
well,
I think we could certainly talk about that.
yeah.
I could talk, we make modifications to signals all the time based on construction. I'm not the traffic operations engineer, but I work closely with him, and so just working ahead of that, we'll see what we can do. As far as sequencing, yeah, but sometimes we run into that a cycle, in one direction is a little bit longer than the other to compensate, to relieve some of that stress from.
That's really fair. Okay. Sure.
I understand that Habitat will be using residential streets to bring in their materials.
Well, I don't understand that, so I'm not, I think that's really a question for the city as to where they get access. It's been our intent all along.
I mean, do you know that that's true? Or,
I don't think they've got an approved access right now, so I don't think anything.
We don't know that that's true.
Yeah, we don't know that's true. Yeah.
We're trying to provide, some of the workers, the volunteers might have to come through the neighborhood to the site, but we're trying to make sure all their deliveries come off of McKnight through the construction site,
Yeah.
to their site. None of the construction traffic, like, I think is permitted to only use McKnight as our preferred at this point.
The ultimate decision maker on that is the city, so the Habitat's gonna have to come to the city and ask for their haul routes, right? This is the way we'd like to get into the site. What Catherine is saying is the port is saying to Habitat, we'll work to provide you access off McKnight on our regular construction access.
actually.
Yeah.
We should see residential streets.
Not
Do you know who the
construction.
contractor is that's gonna do this? The utilities and the streets?
Yes,
You do know that now.
we do know the contracts, for the streets and utilities is called Designing Earth Contracting. They do have a contract in place and, we are working to make sure we can get all the permits in place to start. Like I said, we're gonna start the sanitary work, through here. And then hopefully we can get them access through here. Then a later phase will be to hook up when we close McKnight, but that will be later in the summer.
In the last week, they're gonna have the thermal heating. Does that mean that they have to put all those pipes underground before they ever put the street, surface in?
Correct, so we are gonna have geothermal. It's gonna be on the northern third of the site. It won't service these 2 blocks of Habitat because we don't have the pipe and we didn't get approvals in time to work down here. But it will be the northern third of the site that is addressed, and those pipes will go in conjunction with the other utilities before the streets get paved. All right, thank you very much. Lisa, I saw there was some sugar somewhere, if
Yeah.
folks need a little sugar on the way out.
And we have this room until 8 o'clock, so, feel free to ask all the questions that you'd like at this time. And thank you again for coming out, all of you, WP, Port Authority, we have great, we really do appreciate you coming out.
Thank you guys
Thank you.
for having us.
Thank you.